everyone, and thank you for patiently waiting. Welcome to our National Graduate Week. I'm your host Josh from CareerMap TV, and today we're joined by ESA. During this session, we'll learn what it's like to work at ESA and get some great insight from current employees. There will be a Q&A segment at the end of the webinar, so feel free to leave any questions in the chat box and we'll get back to them after the presentation. So without further ado, I'll now pass it over to the ESA team to start their session. Off you go, guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Lucy van der Tas, and I'm the head of talent acquisition at ESA. And basically, this means it's my job to promote ESA as an employer. And I have today with me Sebastian Rimmer, who will be also talking about what it's like to be a YGT. And I'm assuming, Seb, as I'm introducing you, I'm seeing you not appearing on my screen. So we'd like to start with a short video. So my name is Lucy van der Tas, and I'm the head of talent acquisition at the European Space Agency. Happy to be with you today, and I'm joined by Seb Rimmer. Seb.
Good afternoon, everyone. So alongside Lucy, I am the host in the Careers Department. I am a young graduate trainee here at ESA. I've just started the second year of the programme and have been working on the Hero mission this past year. So more on that later.
Great. So I think we'll get going with the presentation. We've prepared some slides for you about ESA, what it does, what it is, and then there's some slides about the careers opportunities for students and recent graduates. And then Seb will talk in more detail about what he does himself at ESA. So we are ESA. What is ESA? ESA is quite unique in terms of space agencies. We're the only truly international space agency. You can see from the flags across the bottom. You can also see the UK is a full member of the European Space Agency. Also, we work with Canada. We're the only space agency that has no military arm. We do support defense activities, but we are not military oriented. We're located across 7 different countries. And you'll see there we have quite a significant budget that is per year, but 85% of that money, it actually goes back into contracts with space industry. We do not actually build anything ourselves. We do not build rockets. We don't build spacecraft. We work together with industry that does that for us. And that is where 85% of our annual budget goes. The remaining 15%, well, obviously a small part of that goes to pay our salaries. but also a significant part of that money also funds our facilities. And later on in the presentation, you'll see our locations, you see the facilities, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So before we go into the details, I just want to share with you some of the ESA projects and satellite missions which really mean something to me, and which, if you join ESA, you could potentially be working on this sort of activity. So here you have the James Webb Space Telescope, which was a joint ESA, NASA, and Canadian Space Agency mission. It was launched on Christmas Day 2021, and I know the name Van der Tass doesn't necessarily make you think of a Brit, but I am a Brit. And on Christmas Day 2021, my family had to wait with Christmas lunch until I was sure that the launch had happened and that Webb was on its way. And what is very interesting about that, it was launched by Ariane 5, our big workhorse, who was known to be one of the most accurate launchers, and she put Webb exactly where we needed to have it and potentially saved on propellant and extended the lifespan. And on the right, you can see a picture of an image of the Pillars of Creation. It's about 2 years old now, but still I find it very spectacular because we are literally looking at the origins of the universe. Rosetta was launched in 2004. So we're looking at what is potentially quite an old mission, but I still like to look at it because it means quite a lot to me as well. It's the first time any space agency ever landed on a comet, and you can see an artist's impression here of the spacecraft, the lander, and the comet. And what I find particularly outstanding about Rosetta is the fact that when Rosetta was launched in 2004, there was less technology on board than you have today in your mobile phone. And it's amazing to think what can be achieved with technology. JUICE is another one that I have a big soft spot for. JUICE was launched on the 14th of April 2023. Now, when you're launching a satellite, there's something called a launch window. And those of you who are space aficionados will know what I mean. And that is the window in which the launch has to actually happen for the satellite to get to the place where it needs to be. And the JUICE launch window was 1 second. And this is extremely unusual. So basically, the launch had to happen at exactly the moment of the launch window opening, and it had to be in that 1 second. It was supposed to be launched on the 13th of April, but it had to be delayed because of weather to the 14th of April. And what you see on the right, we launched a competition for a mocktail, the JUICE mocktail. And there you can see a design these are my own pictures. So the picture on the left is taken of us at the European Space Agency watching the actual launch. And the picture on the right is a picture of the recipe of the mocktail. There was slightly too much nutmeg in it and cinnamon for my taste, but it was quite an experience to have that. And that was the winning mocktail. But what also makes JUICE special is the fact that it is now, it's going to take 9 years for it to reach Jupiter. So it will arrive in Jupiter in 2021. JUICE is the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, so it's going to Jupiter to explore the icy moons and see if there are signs of life. But just this year, it did the first ever lunar Earth flyby. And obviously, it's a challenge to launch a satellite with sufficient propellant on board for it to survive a mission that long. So what we do is we use the gravity of the Earth and the moon as a slingshot. And there will be another slingshot next summer, also in August, around Venus. And then JUICE will actually set off towards Jupiter. And this just gives a signal. I mean, the calculations that are made to make these flybys, these slingshots, a success. And these are carried out in one of our centers in Germany. And then the Earth Explorers, ESA is a leading agency in terms of Earth observation, monitoring what's going on in the planet. And the Earth Explorers are actually pivotal to the future of our Earth observation activities. The first one was launched in 2009, and they provide data to the scientific community. So they look at atmospheric dynamics, they look at ice melts, they look at food security, freshwater resources. And there are currently 9 Earth Explorer missions. And if you're interested, check out EarthCare. EarthCare was the most recently launched one, which was launched on the 28th of May this year, so not so long ago. I said I would talk you through where we are located, and here you see the locations. And what's important to bear in mind is each location has its dedicated set of teams. So, for instance, satellites are operated by our operations center in Darmstadt, ESOC, in Germany. ESTEC, which is where Seb and I work, the European Space Research and Technology Center, is where the missions are conceived, where they are then project managed once we have the funding and seen right through to launch. We launch with Ariane from French Guiana on the other side of the Atlantic, but we also have a number of other establishments. Our headquarters is in Paris. We are based in Madrid and Italy, Rome, which is where all the data is processed. We have a center in the UK near to Oxford. And we also have the European Astronauts Center in Cologne, which is dedicated to the training and medical support of astronauts. And talking of astronauts, our current recruiting slogan is ESA recruits, not only astronauts, but we can't talk about careers at ESA without mentioning them. And you will see here the pictures of the class of 2009. All of them have flown twice. And then you have the class of 2022. And you may remember Rosemary Coogan's graduation together with the rest of the class in April of this year, following their training. They're now graduated astronauts. And then, of course, we have John McFall, who is a project astronaut who has been helping us study what changes need to be made in order to be able to give somebody with a disability access to space. As you may or may not know, John is the first astronaut ever to be recruited with a disability. Touch a little bit here on the ESA Academy. This is something, if you are still studying, if you are either a bachelor's, master's, or a PhD student, I would definitely say check out the ESA Academy. They have 3 pillars. The first one is the projects program, and where you can get funding to support technology developments or small satellites, experiments, also the opportunity to actually validate them in space through sounding rockets, atmospheric balloons, or even parabolic flights. The training program is a wide range of courses which typically last 1 or 2 weeks, as it says there, but also they take place in our center in Belgium. And anything that has space in its title, the ESA Academy will offer it. Think of space operations, space systems, space law, space medicine. Check out their website. These courses are really, really interesting. They're fully sponsored. You just have to arrange for your own travel to get to Belgium and back, but the rest is fully sponsored. Then there is the engagement program, also worth checking out. There is funding for participation in conferences, in courses. There's also the possibility to carry out internships with industry and small companies. So it's definitely worth looking into what the ESA Academy has to offer. Now I would like to talk you through the entry-level and research programs, and you see there's a number there. We will focus on the ones that are coming up soon. And I just want to stop for a moment and cover the 3 main things that you need to have in order to work with ESA. So first of all, you need to have the nationality of one of ESA member states. There are 22 member states, 4 associate member states, and also Canada as a cooperating state. If you check out our vacancy notices, you will see the countries, the eligible countries listed at the bottom. Another thing that's important to remember, ESA is an intergovernmental organization, which means that you need to apply for a vacancy. All our vacancies are published on our website, jobs.esa.int. And you can also set up an alert on this website. So it's worthwhile checking there, and I'll talk you through some of the programs which are coming up in a moment, and you can take a look at those. And then the 2 other things that you need to have to work at ESA is a master in a relevant domain. Of course, not if you're applying for an internship and you have not got your master yet, and a good level of English, because English is the main working language across ESA. You'll hear any language in the corridors, of course, but the working language is primarily English. Although if you end up working together with the French Space Agency on Ariane, you may need a good level of French. So I'm going to move on now and talk you through some of the programs themselves, starting with the student internship program. So this is a 3 to 6 month placement targeting primarily students in their last years of a master's degree. We do host about 10% bachelor students, And these opportunities will go online on the 1st of November for 1 month. So literally the end of this week, in a couple of days, they will go on, all online. Please bear in mind that Brexit does make things a little bit complicated for coming to Europe. So if you are a UK national, you may need to look at positions based in Harwell near Oxford. If you have another nationality, a European nationality, or you have already some permit or visa for the EU, then it's a different matter. The next program is our Young Graduate Trainee Program, and here there are no limitations because you are a full employee of ESA as a young graduate, and we take care of any residence or work permits. So you don't need to worry about that sort of thing. So this is unlimited. You can all apply. The opportunities will go online in February. They're online for 1 month. It's a 1-year contract. 80% of the young graduates stay on for a second year. And what's interesting, I didn't mention the numbers, but we host about 260 interns a year, around 100 young graduates. So there's plenty of opportunities. The Research Fellowship Program, it's a 2-year contract. Most research fellows, if not all, stay on for a 3rd year. You should have attained a PhD in a relevant field in the last 5 years. And we publish those opportunities throughout the year. And typically we host about 60 new research fellows a year. And the Space Science Program, they host between 6 and 10 research fellows, and they publish their selection in August for 1 month. So if you're about to graduate with a PhD or recently graduated, this could be for you. We also have a co-funded research program. Check that one out as well. The co-funding is substantial. It targets PhD students or postdocs. Funding, as I said, is substantial, but what I think is also really important is the access to the ESA laboratories and the ESA experts and their networks. This is open all year long. This program does not require the nationality of one of the ESA member states, but you do need to be affiliated with a university in one of the member states. All our other programs, we enter into an individual contract between you and ESA. For the co-funded research program, we enter into a contract with the university. And I want to share a few slides now about some of the activities that you could potentially do, the extracurricular activities that you could do with us. So the Young Professional Satellite, you could see it on the left. I've actually seen it live. And you can see the team on the right. It was a satellite that was conceived by our community of young professionals at ESA, and it flew on the maiden launch of Ariane 6 last July. And the idea was that it would film the separation of the 3rd stage, the release of the cover, and also the separation of some of the satellites. And what you can see here is on the left, 9th of July 2024, we have liftoff, Ariane 6's first flight. And on the right, the first images from YPSat itself. What you are looking at are satellites that are still attached to the rocket, about to be released. And of course, a very nice picture of the Earth as well. So what sorts of domains do we offer jobs in? We have 3 main domains. We call them job communities. The first one is engineering. And that is where about 64% of the ESA people are working. Now, this list is not exhaustive. We could not cover every single domain that's covered at ESA in a presentation. Otherwise, I would have about 10 slides just on that. So what we've done here is the main themes. But if you're interested in having more information about the jobs, then you can ask questions, but you can also check out the website. Especially, as I said, we have interesting things going online very soon. The second domain that people associate with an organization like ESA are the scientific disciplines. And here about 6% of the people at ESA work in these domains. And there are some very interesting, the applied mathematics, you remember the slingshot from JUICE going around the Earth and the Moon, and then going into slingshot around Venus next year. That's where applied mathematics is also used for calculating orbits and trajectories. And then, of course, the other ones I think speak for themselves. The business support services, like any organization, ESA needs business support services, and these represent about 30% of the jobs that we have at ESA. And you can see all the sorts of domains, which if you think about it, you think, yeah, companies need this, an organization needs it like ESA, but it's not something you immediately associate with ESA. So for those of you non-engineers who are listening to us now, there could be something there for you too. And I see a quick question about anything working with AI or quantum technologies. Yes, this is a domain that we work in, and yes, there will be opportunities coming up in both of those domains, especially for our internships and young graduate trainee programs. So check out the website jobs.esa.int and set up an alert there, or set up an alert there even. So what are we looking for? This slide gives an overview of the main areas, aspects that we're looking for. And I'm going to just highlight two of them. I was a recruiter for ESA for 10 years, and I would say that there are two things that I was specifically looking for in candidates. The first one is team spirit. We're a big team, we work together in teams, and it's extremely important that people can work together in teams and they enjoy working together in teams. So this is something that we were looking for. The other one is professional curiosity. I'm assuming that you are either still studying or are recently graduated. So to bring a lot of experience into the mix is a big ask, but that professional curiosity is essential. This is what keeps you learning. This is what keeps you at the cutting edge of your skills, your expertise throughout your career. And this was something that I was also particularly looking for in candidates. What we offer, well, I hope I've shown some inspiring projects and activities that you too could be working on. There's no guarantees, of course, but because of the wide range of activities that we do have, you can find information about our salary conditions and what it's like to work at ESA on the website, the careers website. We also do a lot of social, sports and cultural activities in our free time. We have clubs that we organize and run ourselves. It's all a volunteer basis. It's a great way to meet colleagues outside work. And there are a lot of learning and development opportunities, ongoing formal ones, training courses, but also just the opportunity to exchange with experts and the people who work at ESA. So my last slide shows a living logo. This was taken, just over a year ago. It was taken at our annual team day when we all come together and meet up and exchange at an informal level, getting to know people better. And this living logo, actually what you're seeing is a drone picture, but we had arranged for satellite flyby. And they wanted the drones to get some pictures, but also to make sure that we were in the right place. I don't know if you can see my cursor, maybe not, but I'm standing in the top of the E from ESA, not the big logo. And we're all standing there with a piece of paper in our hands above our heads, waiting for the satellite to go by. We ended up with 8 drone pictures from 8 different establishments. We unfortunately only have 7 satellite pictures because the cloud cover in the UK was too thick for the satellite to be able to take a picture of our UK centre. But better luck next time. So I would like to hand over now to Seb. Over to you, Seb.
Thank you, Lucy. So hello again, everyone. I'm just going to talk briefly about the work that I do at ESA and a little bit about my journey to get to being a YGT first of all. So my name's Sebastian. Like I said, I'm a young graduate trainee here in the Netherlands. And before that, I studied at the University of Sheffield. I did an integrated aerospace master's, so one of these 4-year-long integrated master's courses. That also included a year abroad in the US. And among my studies, I also was able to do two industry-based internships, extremely luckily, both in the space sector in the UK. One was for a software company on the left called Bright Ascension in Edinburgh. And then this led me into another internship at a company called In Space Missions, which is now part of BAE Systems in Hampshire. And the image on the right down there in the corner, that is when I was part of one of the ESA Academy programs while still at Sheffield. So this was a team that I co-led, and we actually entered into a competition, and we were able to come to this site in the Netherlands here and present some of our ideas at the one of the workshops for the Rexus program, which was the sounding rocket and high altitude balloon program. So after these experiences, I very luckily ended up at ESA. And what do? So on the polo shirt that I'm wearing here, this is from the HERA mission. HERA very recently launched in October to the Didymos Dimorphos asteroid system. And this is part of a planetary defense mission. It's the follow-up to the DART impactor that hit the asteroids in 2021. So this is the follow-up mission to be a close-up inspection of the asteroid site. And very luckily, working on a project is quite a rare thing for a YGT at ESA. So I've been incredibly lucky. I've been able to really leverage my skills of software testing, experiences that I had in industry, and also really in-depth engineering analysis that's involved investigating the flexible modes of solar arrays and how this impacts the control algorithm of the steering and pointing of the HERA satellites, but also requirements validation and some end-of-life mission analysis. So it's quite fitting that Lucy showed an image earlier of the Rosetta Comet's mission, because some of the work I've been doing for HERA has been trying to plot and determine what best trajectories can be used to dispose of the satellite at end of mission onto the asteroid. And I have been looking a lot in detail at the Rosetta mission and how they did it. So it really shows there's a lot of continuation of knowledge and a lot of real engineering expertise you can access here at ESA. So it's incredible. Lucy also, of course, mentioned that there are lots of other activities that we can do. So I've also been involved in events planning for the young ESA community here in the Netherlands. I've also been involved in some outreach events for the HERA mission, and I very luckily was able to go and see the launch of HERA in Florida. So I mentioned I'm in my second year at the moment. So all the HERA work has been the first year. As Lucy mentioned, 80% of YGTs stay on for a second year. And in my second year, I'm changing roles slightly into the guidance navigation and control division here at ESTEC. And I'm currently working on vision-based navigation methods for the ADRIOS program. So this is a wide area of technologies and capabilities that ESA was trying to develop in active debris removal and in orbit servicing. Luckily, this is also a very active area of research in the UK. So I've really got my eye on companies in the UK to potentially go and work for after my time here. So what is life at ESA like? As I say, busy. Outside of the day job, there are a wide range of activities. The highest profile out of these, of course, is YPSat. And I know it can seem slightly impersonal. You see all these amazing images online of the Earth here and YPSat down in the corner. I do just want to reassure you that these are people, and there's a very human connection to all of these activities, because picture, the tattoos of this picture and everything. I was actually looking at this photo 20 minutes after it was decoded, so you can really be extremely close to these really exciting engineering activities here. So apart from YPSat, there are a wide variety of Young ESA events, and Young ESA is a large part of the life here at ESA for young graduates and interns. So there are things like the Young ESA ski trip, which I helped organize last year. And there's also the YPE events, which happens at ESTEC, which is a big gathering of all of the young professionals here at ESA, which happens in May every year. So as well as having had a really large exposure to the technical side of the work here at ESA, I really cannot understate the value of meeting new friends from across Europe and also being able to be involved in all of these activities. So that's my life at ESA, and I'm really looking forward to next year. So back to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Seb. So we're coming to the question and answer time. And I'm going to put up a couple of websites here for you to refer to. So the careers website, where you can find information about what it's like to work at ESA, the terms and conditions, additional information like that. There's a link to the ESA Academy and also to our jobs website. So any questions, please feel free to ask anything you'd like to know about the European Space Agency and maybe didn't dare to ask before today. Just put your questions in the chat.
Just to follow up on the question there about AI and quantum technologies, I do actually know a YGT who is working on this currently. It's not the main breadth of his job, but he certainly knows that, as you said, Lucy, they really want to expand the work and recruitment in this area. So in the Q&A, I can see there are a few questions. I'm going to... Which ones do you want to answer, Lucy? It looks like some of these are more for yourself, more for me.
Why don't I'll take the first one from Rita Bira if we're looking at the same order, and then you take the next one?
Sure.
Should we start with
Sounds
that?
Good.
Okay,
Yes.
Great. Okay, so the Young Graduate Trainee Program and the Young Professional Scheme, we talk about relevant experience. So the Young Graduate Trainee Program targets people with 0 to 1 year of experience. So it is actually aimed at people who have literally just graduated. So there, the relevant experience criterion will not be mentioned, but obviously it's between 0 and 1 year. And if you do have relevant experience, that will be very useful. And there, because people are at the start of their careers, the actual relevant is less critical. A similar job role, different industry like aviation, could very much be considered relevant experience. It depends very much on the role that you're going for and the other requirements. So it's very much role specific. I would say have a look at the vacancies. By the way, the Young Professional Scheme, I didn't mention it because it won't be going online now until April or May next year, but that targets people with 2 to 3 years of experience coming on to ESA for 3 years with a view to a permanent position after that. But we can, if you have more questions, please feel free to put them in. Okay, Seb, I think I've answered that one.
Sure, so I'll take the next question. Why did you choose ESA for your graduate scheme? I decided relatively early on in my degree that I wanted to go straight into the space industry. And I think the most obvious entry point was the biggest national space agency I have access to. So that would obviously be ESA. ESA is obviously a larger organization in the UKSA. And I think why I chose ESA specifically was because like I mentioned earlier, I had taken part in one of the ESA Academy workshops, and also I had done one of the ESA Academy training weeks as well. I really want to emphasize that those are incredible courses, and I really would encourage you to apply to them, even if you are relatively early on in your university career. And I think the other thing about ESA is that there is such a wide breadth of nationalities here, which is extremely exciting. And for me personally, coming to work in the Netherlands was a really, really exciting prospect. The Netherlands here at ESTEC will have the majority of the engineering-based roles. I wanted to apply specifically for an engineering-based role. It was an added bonus that it happened to be in the Netherlands, and the standard of living here is really, really nice. There's a lot going on, and I had spoken to several young graduate trainees before applying, so I think the combination of living and working abroad and also a really exciting engineering discipline was something that really attracted me to ESA specifically.
Great, thank you. I think the next question, how many grad vacancies are there each year? It's between 100 and 110. So I think that's a simple answer. Anika is asking, molecular biosciences, are they relevant to ESA? It depends very much on the position. It's a bit niche at ESA, the biosciences, the bioengineering. It primarily focuses to the astronauts and the experiments that they carry out in space, either on themselves or on biological material that's been taken into space. So on that one, I would say check out the vacancies. But I hope this answers your question, Anika, that yes, there may be an opportunity for biosciences and maybe molecular as well. What projects we have in the pipeline? It depends what you mean by which projects we have in the pipeline. There's a lot of information on ESA's website if you're talking about satellite missions and things like that. So I would refer you to the website for that, unless you're talking about projects in connection with careers. And then, of course, we're happy to take that question. David, graduating May 2025. Can I take a year out before applying to the young graduate scheme? Yes, you can. I think that's simple. It's 0 to 1 year of experience, and that you would not have. So if you're graduating May 2025, then you would need to apply in February 2025. The selection process takes several months, and most of the young graduates start in September, October. So I would do that in parallel if I were you. A question from anonymous user saying, how is the scheme structured, please? We'll need you to specify which scheme you're asking about. I can't answer that question otherwise. Positions related to the environmental activities, impacts of ESA activities, yes. Not many, but there are some, so check out the website. Candidates with degree apprenticeships, it depends on what that degree is, not so much the route that you've gone to get it. So if you have a master, whether you've done the academic route or the apprenticeship route, that is less relevant than the fact that we require the master as a minimal educational requirement, unless, of course, you're applying for internship program, and there it is, there you should be studying for your master. Right. Tips on the application process selection assessment center. Perhaps I start that one, Seb, and then you talk about it from what you went, your own experience last year.
Sure, sounds good.
Yeah. So the application itself is very important. The first selection will be done on the basis of the documents that you submit. We ask for an application form to be filled in with some pre-selection questions. We ask for a CV to be uploaded. We ask for a motivation letter to be uploaded. And there will be other documentation asked as well. So it's very important that you write your CV and your motivation letter so that it's very clear to the recruiting manager, who may be looking at quite a number of applications, that it's clear to that person what exactly you can bring to the job and what is the relevance to the vacancy that you're applying for. The CV and motivation letter for people at the start of their career should be 1 page. The motivation letter should not be more than 1 page. Bear this in mind. And I see the CV as a little bit like a skeleton, while the motivation letter is putting the meat on the skeleton, describing the why and the how, and the why from your perspective, for the technical perspective, from the personal and motivational perspective, whereas the CV is about the what. The selection process itself, then this very first selection, which takes place based on the documentation that you have submitted. Then the next phase is usually there could be an asynchronous video. So what that means basically is that you will get some questions to read, and you will answer them, and your answers will be recorded and then reviewed at a different time by the recruiting managers. And we finish up with an online interview. Depending on the program, depending on the position, it could be between 2 or 4 or 5 people who are interviewing, and that's where the final decision takes place. Seb, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that from your own experiences.
Nothing extra particularly exciting, because my application process was exactly as you described. I would say that the CV and the cover letter, they need to be as specific as possible to each role that you apply to. So when you apply to a YGT, when I applied, it was 2 positions you could apply to. I don't know if that's going to change in this year, but you need to make sure that your cover letter is, and your CV is tailored to each application. You want to demonstrate in your cover letter that you are curious. You want to demonstrate that you know about the position you're applying to. So for me, when I applied to the HERA mission job, I made sure I did sufficient background research on the mission, and you want to show this in the cover letter that you've done your research on the role that you're applying for. And I can remember printing off the application and literally drawing points between each point on the job reference and parts of my cover letter to make sure that I was addressing every single point they were asking for with relevant experience. And I was extremely lucky that I had done an internship in software testing, which was very similar to a lot of the skills they were looking for in the HERA job reference. But I also applied for another job, and that was more systems engineering based, and my cover letter was quite different because it was talking less about my work experience and more about the experiences I'd had at university of space systems engineering courses or managing projects and working in teams. So one of my biggest tips would just be to make sure that your cover letters are as specific as possible. And yes, as Lucy said, there's the questions that flash up, and then you answer your answers, and those are recorded. So I had one of those for the HERA job, and then there's the interviews, which are usually with the hiring managers and the line manager inside the section who's hiring you. These can be slightly more technical questions, depending on the job. But I hear myself and Lucy, we keep on repeating, it's specific to the job. It really, really is, because a lot of the job descriptions are very different, and when all the applications come out, when all the job references are published, I would advise people to go through each and every single one and see if it is relevant to you, because there are some very subtle differences and similarities between them. So it's really important to make sure that you're applying to the one that is obviously interesting to you, but also matches with your experience and skills. That was probably quite a convoluted answer, but I wanted to make sure I got everything in there.
I can only fully subscribe to everything that you've said, because you've pretty much summarized what I say to people if they ask for advice. Just a couple of other things, because I see a question from Rita about do any further tips for the motivation letter, and I think you've been very comprehensive, but I have 2. The first one is to prepare, and Seb highlighted that one very well indeed, is do prepare for your interview. It's very important for the recruiting manager to see how you have prepared. Not just a statement, I prepared for my application by doing, but actually demonstrating that, because applying for a job is an important step. It's something that you want. And if you don't prepare for that, then how are you going to prepare for the work that you're going to be doing when you actually have the job? So bear that in mind. And the second point is checking. And when I say this, you can rely on spell check or any of the other tools out there up to a certain level. I once saw a motivation letter which said, "Dear ESA, I'm applying for the position of XYZ," and then there was a whole motivation letter, and at the end it said, "Thank you very much, I am looking forward to work at Airbus." And that is not something that the spell check will pick up, but the hiring manager will. So do check your details. It's quite normal when you're starting your career to maybe have a template letter, template CV, which you then adapt for each application. It's quite normal. I would say I would find it more normal than not to have one, but do make sure that when you are adapting your templates to a specific application, that you pick up on any potential glitches or little mishaps like that. And you said, Seb, about the young graduate trainee program, 2 positions. Well, that was changed last year. You can apply for 3 now. So last year we started by saying you could apply for 3, and this year will be the same. 2025 selection in February, so coming year. Okay, thank you. So we've got quite a short question, the routes to becoming an astronaut. That could be quite a complicated answer. So I'll take that one in a moment, and I will just answer the other two. So the 0 to 1 year of experience for the YGT only counts as relevant experience or any postgraduate work, but the more relevant, the better. And then what happens after the grad scheme ends? Is there a job offer? Not necessarily. A very small percentage of our young graduate trainees stay with ESA directly afterwards. A lot of them go into industry, they work, they go back to academia, they go and do a PhD, they go and do something different. The idea, what you need to understand at ESA, when I said at the very beginning that we don't manufacture anything ourselves, we work together with industry for our projects. Therefore, industrial experience is extremely valuable. The ESA Young Graduate Trainee Program has been around for just over 40 years, and it was conceived with the idea that people would come to ESA for a 1 to 2 year traineeship, then they would go back to industry, get the industrial experience, which is very valuable, and then apply again to ESA. Doesn't mean that you cannot be recruited immediately. It happens. I mean, we want the full range. We want people who have done a variety of routes to get to ESA, but that explains a little bit the rationale behind the ESA graduate scheme. And registering for next year's intake, go to jobs.esa.int and sign up for an alert, and the system will tell you when next year's intake goes online, and then you can actually apply. So coming back to this question about astronauts, what I say to people when they say to me, how do I prepare to become an astronaut? I say, well, the chances of becoming an astronaut are very, very small. So when we opened the vacancy in 2021, one vacancy, we had nearly 23,000 applicants, and we ended up recruiting 6 of them. So you can just work out the chances of selection for yourselves. Also, you need to bear in mind that an astronaut selection is a significant amount of work and effort, also cost. I personally do not foresee us doing another astronaut campaign for maybe 8 to 10 years, especially in view of the fact that not only did we recruit the 6, we also have 11 people in reserve, and we have a very active class of 2009. One of those astronauts is quite likely to be the first European on the moon. So I would say watch this space. But what I do say is there are a couple of things that I don't expect to change. First of all, is the requirement for a master in a relevant domain. We've moved away from fighter pilots, although fighter pilots still apply, but they too need a master. We also opened it up to medical degrees, but so long as it was a degree in a STEM discipline. The Japanese Space Agency opened up a vacancy last year where also you could apply if you had teaching qualifications. I don't see that happening in the short term at ESA, but in 8 to 10 years, an awful lot can happen. But if you're thinking seriously about preparing now, then I would say make sure that your degree is in a STEM area. The next thing is to get relevant experience. Most of the people who end up being recruited as an astronaut have 5 to 10 years experience under their belts in a variety of domains, and make sure you get some exposure to very challenging situations. So diving is one thing, Antarctic expeditions, mountain climbing. A lot of people ask if it's necessary to get a pilot's license. We understand that this can be quite an expensive exercise. In any case, the selected astronauts will get their pilot's licenses after they become an astronaut. So it's not a requirement, could be nice to have. But the key thing that we're looking for is people who have the right qualifications, who are very flexible and easygoing. You can't be having fights up in for several cubic meters of space, a few cubic meters, and end up chucking somebody out the front door. That doesn't work in space. So you need to be flexible and easygoing, very conflict oriented to make sure that conflicts don't arise, and collegial teamwork I mentioned earlier is being very important. And then stress resistance. That's also very important. You just need to think about what happened to Luca Parmitano on one of his spacewalks when his spacesuit malfunctioned and his helmet started filling up with water. You cannot panic under those circumstances. You cannot panic if there is an emergency. Luca stayed calm. They got him back on board. and they were able to empty his helmet. But if he had panicked, it might have ended differently. So these are things that we are looking for, and which I don't expect to change. You can Google ESA astronaut selection, and you will find the mini website that we created for the 2021-2022 selection. There is an astronaut selection handbook. Check that out. And then I would say, have fun. Do things which you're going to enjoy. Do things which will potentially help strengthen your application as an astronaut, but make sure you have fun too, because as I said, the chances of actually becoming an astronaut are very, very small. Right. We've still got a few more questions coming in, so we have a little bit of time. Do we take ex-military? Yes. If you have the master's requirement, yes. Will we be working with SpaceX on their vision for Mars colonization? That I think you would have to ask our Director General what his policy is. So if you follow him on LinkedIn or X, you'll hear more about what his future and vision is for ESA. Candidates for who do the internship, are they fast-tracked onto the grad scheme, or do they have to apply again? You have to apply again. About 15% of our young graduate trainees have been interns at ESA. So it's a relatively small number. We try to be as fair and as open and inclusive to everybody, to give everybody an opportunity. And Rita, how many applications do we get for the 100 to 110 positions? It's between 8,000 and 9,000. So it is a very competitive program. And that's why the tips that Seb and I were giving about the CV, the application, the motivation letter are really critical, because you want to be able to stand out. Seb, is there anything you'd like to add?
The point about interns being fast-tracked onto the grad scheme, like Lucy said, you do have to apply again, but one of my friends who was an intern is now a YGT, so it does happen. Well, no, in fact, 3 of my friends who are YG2s did internships. So yes, it definitely happens. Was there anything else? I think the one about job offers and prospects after the YGT was an interesting question. And I think it's important to re-emphasize that the YGT isn't, the sentiment is not like at a large company like Airbus or Rolls-Royce. I have several friends who are currently doing or have just done the graduate program at Airbus and Rolls-Royce, and the impression I get is that they want to cling on to their graduates for as long as possible. Any commercial company would. Like Lucy was saying, the point of the YGT is to give people the viewpoint of what working at ESA is and working with industry. And then the whole point is that you go back into industry with some knowledge of how ESA works, how ESA interacts with companies, how ESA expects contracts to be implemented, how ESA expects work to be implemented. So when you first get here, you kind of see the other side of that. So, for example, when I was working on the HERO mission, I was doing software testing and software validation of code that had been written by a company that ESA had directly contracted to do the software for the HERO mission. That's probably quite a large, well, no, that is a large simplification, but I was checking work that other people had done. There is obviously some internal work that is done. So some of the mission analysis I was doing, that is internal to ESA, but a lot of the hardcore hands-on engineering will be directed by ESA and physically done by industry. The point being, when you leave ESA, you can go and do this yourself. So I think it's really important to get that across. I think the question about SpaceX and Mars colonization, that's interesting. We'll see what happens. But yes, follow Yusuf Ashbacher and see what he has to say.
Great, thank you. And then a question from Rebecca: how many people tend to get shortlisted for each stage? So we have the CV review process. This tends to reduce the number significantly. I would say 15 to 20% go through to the pre-selection, and then a small number go through to the final stage of the actual face-to-face interview. So yes, it's quite competitive. So any other questions? I think we've covered each one. I hope that the answers that we've been giving have been helpful.
I would just like to add one point about relevant experience. Relevant experience in the space domain in the UK is hard to come by. It is changing because in the time that I was studying the space applications catapults, they offer a joint internship program with many companies across the UK space industry. And I really noticed how that number went from 10, 15 back in 2019, 18, all the way up to now where I think they offer at least 50 internships in cooperation with industry. So it's a really exciting area to work in the UK because it is growing very rapidly. When I was working at a small company in Scotland, they doubled in the time I was working for them. The other company that I left, they have now also doubled. So it's a fast growing industry. There are several avenues to go down. And one of the other things I just like to say is that you don't have to come from a space specific background. If you're doing a software engineering degree and you've done embedded systems knowledge is extremely valuable in space. If you're coming from a science background and you've done things involving sensing instruments and optics, that is extremely relevant to the Earth observation program. One of my colleagues who I was just having lunch with today, she did an internship at Amazon. She now works in the commercialization directorate here at ESA. So it is also not just engineering. I know we put a lot of emphasis on engineering in this presentation, but like Lucy said, a good 30% of all the roles here at ESA are not directly related to engineering. It will be business, accounts, management as well. So there really is a really wide breadth of skills that are required for all the positions.
Thank you very much, Seb. I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. So, Josh, I think we can probably sign off now.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And first off, I just want to thank you guys for obviously joining and the detail that you did go into answering them questions. That was fantastic. So yeah, again, just extending the gratitude to everybody that has attended. I hope everybody did find it insightful and useful. If you didn't miss anything, this session was recorded and will be on our website and YouTube in the coming week. So that's Career Map TV. So yeah, thank you very much for joining, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.